limit is t goes to 2 of the square root of 2t squared plus 3 minus the square root of t plus 9 divided by t squared plus 5t minus 14. The first thing we're going to do is try plugging a 2 in for each of the t's. So we will have the square root of 2 times 2 squared plus 3 minus the square root of 2 plus 9 divided by 2 squared plus 5 times 2 minus 14. In the numerator, 2 squared is a 4 times another 2 is an 8 plus 3 under the root, and then 2 plus 9 is an 11 under the root. In the denominator, 2 squared is a 4, 5 times a 2 is a 10, and minus 14. In the numerator, the root of 8 plus 3 is 11, minus the root of 11. In the denominator, 4 plus 10 is a 14, minus a 14. Square root of 11 minus square root of 11 is 0, over 14 minus 14, which is a 0. We have 0 over 0 indeterminate form. We will need to rework this. Since we have a root combination, a root involving the variable t, added or subtracted together with at least one other term, we can try the root conjugate method. So we're going to multiply the numerator and denominator by the root conjugate of that root combination. I'm going to rewrite the limit exactly as we were given. The root conjugate is the same root combination, but opposite sign between the roots, so it'll be plus. We're going to put it over itself so that it's a form of 1, so that when we multiply we're not changing the value, we're just changing the look. And this will give us limit as t goes to 2. In the numerator we have a conjugate pair. We're going to FOIL that out. First, root of 2t squared plus 3 times the root of 2t squared plus 3 gives you 2t squared plus 3. The outside, root of 2t squared plus 3 times the positive root of t plus 9 will give us a positive root of 2t squared plus 3 times t plus 9. Inside, the negative root of t plus 9 times the root of 2t squared plus 3 will give us a negative root of 2t squared plus 3 times t plus 9. And then the last negative root of t plus 9 times the positive root of t plus 9 will be a negative of t plus 9. Now when you FOIL out conjugates, the outside and inside terms will be opposite sign, equal value, will always cancel with each other. The big thing to be careful with is this here. I keep this in parentheses, and that negative sign will distribute into both of those. In the denominator we will have t squared plus 5t minus 14 multiplying with the conjugate, but since these are not root conjugates of each other, you will not FOIL this out, but rather keep it multiplying in a factored version like that. Our next step in the numerator is to distribute the minus sign. So we have 2t squared plus 3 minus t minus 9 over the denominator. T squared plus 5t minus 14 times the root of 2t squared plus 3 plus the root of t plus 9. In the numerator we can combine together like terms, and that will give us a 2t squared minus a t. There's no like terms with those, but the 3 and the negative 9 can add to be a negative 6. And the denominator will just keep it as is. And that's your result for the root conjugate. That does not remove the 0 over 0, ever. The root conjugate puts it into a new form that can be reworked in some other way. We have power functions, so we'll be able to factor and cancel. We have a 0 over 0 happening here still because of that in the numerator and because of that in the denominator, and both of those can trinomial factor. So that's going to be our next step, is to trinomial factor each of those. So limit as t goes to 2 of. Now keep in mind when you're factoring these, because t is going to 2 and we're getting 0 over 0, we should have a factor of either t minus 2 or 2 minus t, one or the other. Because we have the t squared terms in both of them being positive, it should factor to a t minus 2. Now in the numerator we have a 2t squared, so we're going to have a 2t and a t. Now we need two numbers that multiply to be a negative 6, so they have to be opposite sign of each other. And it can either be a 6 and a 1, or a 2 and a 3. And you just have to try the different combinations, but they have to add to be a negative 1 after one of them gets multiplied by a 2t, notice here. So let's try 6 and 1. We can put a 6 here and a 1 here. That's a 12t and a 1t. That won't work. That's not going to give us a 1. We can try the 6 here and the 1 here. That gives us a 2 and a 6. And again, that won't combine to be a 1. We need to be negative 1 in the end. So it must be 2 and 3 that we're going to try out. So we can put a 3 here and a 2 here. That'll give us a 6 and a 2. That's not going to give us a 1 when combined anyway. So let's reverse them. And let's put the 2 here and the 3 here. And that'll give us a 4 and a 3, which combine to give us a 1. Now we want it to be a negative 1, so we need the 4 to be a negative, so we need that to be a negative, and the 3 to be a positive, so it'll look like that. And not surprising, there's the t minus 2 factor that we should expect. Now in the denominator, we're also going to trinomial factor. And then we have these roots. Also part of the multiplication down there. So here it's just a t squared, so t and t. We need two numbers that multiply to be a negative 14, opposite sign of each other then, and either a 14 and a 1 or a 2 and a 7. And they have to add to be a positive 5. So it sounds like the 2 and the 7 will work for us. And since it's positive 5, we're going to want the 7 to be positive and the 2 to be negative. And there's the t minus 2 factor in the denominator. They can now cancel to remove the 0 over 0. So we'll have limit as t goes to 2 of 2t plus 3 divided by t plus 7 times the square root of 2t squared plus 3 plus the square root of t plus 9. Since we no longer have 0 over 0, we can try plugging the 2 in for each of the t's. So we will have 2 times 2 plus 3 divided by 2 plus 7 times the square root of 2 times 2 squared plus 3 plus the square root of 2 plus 9. That comes out to, in the numerator, 2 times 2 is a 4 plus a 3. In the denominator, 2 plus 7 is a 9. And then 2 squared is 4 times another 2 is an 8 plus a 3 plus the square root of 2 plus 9, which is the square root of 11. So we have 7 divided by 9 times the square root of 8 plus 3, which is 11, plus the square root of 11. We can add those root 11s together, and that will be 2 root 11 in the denominator. So we end up with 7 divided by 18 root 11.